Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Short Play, a series of quick tours of games I like on a variety of platforms, new and old. Today we're looking at a game called A Valley Without Wind. This was a 2012 release by a company called Arcen Games, who were one of the first developers to sort of wholeheartedly embrace the idea of procedural generation in their games. Now obviously this has been a thing since the original Rogue and that sort of thing, but there's very much a sort of modern era of indie games that made procedural generation a big part of their identity. And Arcen Games was sort of on the front line of that. They're not a particularly well-known developer, but they did make a point of trying to incorporate as much procedural generation as possible into their games. Now, A Valley Without Wind is a game that almost defies easy explanation in that it's a curious blend of different genres, deliberately so. In fact, it's such a strange blend of things that on the official wiki for the game, there is a page entitled just "What genre is this anyway?" If you had to sum it up, it's basically a fusion between elements of strategic city building, action RPG, shoot 'em up, and open structure 2D platforming with a healthy dose of crafting and survival sim in there as well. That doesn't mean it's like another Minecraft clone or Terraria clone or anything like that though. It's very much its own unique game. So part of the idea of today is to show you what it's all about and see if you might want to give it a go, because I really like this game. I've liked it ever since its original release, and I've just recently rediscovered it and have been having a lot of fun with it. So it received mixed reviews on its original release, likely mostly due to the fact that it requires a fairly significant time investment to get anywhere. And it's also extremely non-linear as well. So if you're the sort of person who needs clear direction on what to do, this is very much a game about setting your own goals and following through on them rather than sort of being told explicitly what to do. So your average game reviewer who is quite pushed for time, especially on sort of smaller scale indie games that aren't necessarily going to bring in the clicks, then yeah, well, we all know what happens there. So this game was succeeded by a sequel in 2013, so a year after its original release, but that offers quite a different gameplay experience, so we'll look at that separately another time. So today we're going to focus on the first game. Let's go play A Valley Without Wind.
Okay, here we are with A Valley Without Wind by Arcen Games. It is the year 888. Reality has just shattered. Wind-blasted snowfields have covered the world of Environ for centuries. Citizens in this ice age, reliant on their magic-driven technology, now find the world an alien place that seeks to devour them. Only Glyph bearers chosen by the enigmatic Ilari are able to venture forth into the wind-swept wilds. They discover shards of time and space have slammed haphazardly together. Industrialized cities from the 5th century lie in just abandoned ruin, crammed next to Bronze Age towns from the 1st century of the ancient era, in the shadow of robotic enclaves from a time after people. Most people from every time period were shredded by the universe's collapse, but some live on despite scouring windstorms and encroaching monsters. These people are as lost and alone as the survivors from the Ice Age. Glyph-bearer life expectancy not being particularly high, the survivors must work together if they wish to stay alive. Overlords subjugate entire continents, lieutenants at their side. Strangely selective volcanic fissures erupt under buildings. Monsters roam freely, and the whispering wind drives wanderers mad. The Glyph bearers are tasked with somehow rebuilding civilization amidst it all. They will need to find resources, learn new spells, and scavenge technology. The broken world is irreparable, but some may build what all dream of: a valley without wind. Right. Okay. So this game is a lot bigger in scope than sort of I can completely demonstrate in one sitting. But I'm going to give you a quick tour of basically how this all works from my current playthrough, which is part way through the first continent of the game. So this game is structured... In fact, let me just wander out here and I'll show you. So this is the world map. When you start the game, you have a settlement, which is where you come from and where you have some protection from the Ilari. And there is an overlord who is subjugating the entire continent. He is a lot higher level than everything else on the continent, so in theory you could go and storm his fortress straight away and try and take him down, but he will probably kill you. So, there's several things you need to do. First of all, you need to go and find his lieutenants, like this one here. who is level 5. There's normally 4 lieutenants, I think, but I've taken out 3 of them on this continent already. Now, let's go visit the settlement first and see what's going on here. Oh, that's the wrong place. That's my settlement. There we go. Right. So in your settlement, these big crystal things here, these are the Ilari. And you'll see that they talk to you in the corner. The spectre of unhappiness looms in every settlement. It is the curse of this world that is most in need of breaking. So, there's a light city building element to this game. You see all these buildings that have been constructed in the background here from all various different time periods. These are things that I've collected over the course of my various missions, and each of these provide their own bonuses to what's going on. So if I have a look in this shed here, I can see all of these structures that I've built here. So, for example, the acid water derrick here provides 12% additional power on water spells. The skyscraper provides 8% additional mana regeneration, and these have all got their own little bit of lore to look at as well. So there's a lot of stuff to discover in this game, which is really fun. So the basic structure of this game, you have this helpful blue guy here who will give you some suggestions on what to do. So things I should do at the moment is get 2 or more level 5 ranged offensive spells. If you look down at my hotbar down here, I've actually already got a couple of level 5 spells. I've got level 5 Forest Rage, which is a earth element spell, level 5 Fireball, which is a fire element spell, obviously, and a level 5 Ball Lightning. So that's probably sort of all I need for the minute, really. Dispatch survivors against the Overlord. This is not something that you really do until the end of the continent. So what you do, the Overlord is currently extra dangerous. Even if you kill all the lieutenants, the Overlord will still overpower you by 5 levels. To even the tables, you'll really want to send your survivors on dispatch missions against the Overlord. Each successful attack against the Overlord will reduce the Overlord's level by 1. So these additional people who are running around here, these are other survivors that I've rescued. And they've each got their own specialism. So you can send them out against the Overlord, but probably at the moment they're probably not willing to go. So 1000 difficulty, 1600 danger, plus 100 adventuring skill check. So if you look at the moment, none of these guys are willing to go because they're all very likely to die. So what we need to do is we need to build some more structures on this continent that will give them bonuses to their professions. So this lady here is an adventurer, for example, with 423 skill points and a mood of 106. So basically their overall capabilities, I think it's a sum of their skill points and their mood. So you can give them gifts and that will kind of buff them up to do things. But at the moment they're all a bit crap. So we'll leave them to it for now. So we need to do a few things in order to continue progressing. Don't need to worry too much about spells at the minute, but you'll see a lot of this map is covered by this windstorm here. You can go into areas that have got the windstorm, but you will continually take damage, and if you haven't equipped yourself properly, you'll also get blown around by the wind as well. So what you need to do is you need to build wind shelters like this thing here. And you can either do that by purchasing them at great expense in your settlement, or the better way of doing it is to seek out what are called secret missions in any of these areas around here. And those will sometimes, not always, provide you with a wind shelter to build. So what we'll do, we're going to find an area that we haven't visited yet. So you see that as you walk over the various areas, it will tell you whether or not you've been there. And also, if you walk over an area that does say mission on it, you can see down at the bottom what the kind of mission is. So in this case, it's destroy a boss gang in building. And I would get the Summon Tornado 5 spell if I completed that. Now, the secret missions that provide you with buildings, they don't show up on the map. What you have to do, you have to go into an area and just go look for it. So let's go into the Craggy Highlands here and see what we can find. So when you enter an area, you're presented with a few things. You've got the mini-map of the current area that you're in down here. Down here you have the dungeon map, which gradually expands. And the dungeon map works in quite an unusual sort of rather... Oh, God. Get out of here. That was a nice way to start, wasn't it? Yeah. So the dungeon map simply shows you the connections between rooms. It doesn't necessarily show you what direction things are in. So you have to explore and find your way between the various areas. These green rooms on here, these are just standard outdoor areas. So they're not much help for our purposes. What we're looking for is a sort of orangey brown room that indicates that there's a secret mission there. So we need to find our way through these various areas using our mad platforming skills and get up there. Now you may well be wondering how the hell I would get up a sheer cliff like this, and the answer is with stacking a big bunch of crates on top of each other. So there is a crafting element to this game, but it's not it's sort of the kind of game where you have to craft every single crate and platform that you want to use. You simply purchase those things from the settlement. And then you can use them at will. So there's only really two sort of structures that you need to build in levels like this. Those are wooden crates and wooden platforms. The difference between them... Oh god, what the hell is that? I've never seen one of those before. It's scary. Yeah, so there's wooden crates and wooden platforms. Wooden crates sit on the floor, like we've seen. And wooden platforms can be used when you've got a background like this. So when there's like a piece of cave or something like that, you can attach wooden platforms to the background to build basically ladders for yourself. Alright, so working our way through here. Making our way over to the right hand side to proceed. So you see there's a bunch of buildings scattered around the place here. You can go in any of those buildings. This is a game that was designed around that sort of cliched principle of if you can see it, you can go to it. And yes, indeed, if you want to, you can go inside each and every one of these houses. And every one of these houses has a stash room in them somewhere. In fact, I'll show you that now. I'll show you how that works. It's not something we need to do right now, but I will show you. Now, those green things that are flying towards me when I defeat something, that is the only way to heal yourself. The only way to heal in this game is to defeat enemies. So you have to play quite aggressively in order to stay on top of your health bar. Right, here's a good opportunity to use some platforms because I can't quite reach that platform there. So if I build a platform there, I can then just hop onto that and jump up. And again, another one here would probably be helpful. Then we can go through this door. Now, if you look at this map down in the corner, it shows you the connections between the rooms. So basically, whatever is at the bottom of the map is a connection to the outside of the area. Light blue rooms are just normal rooms of various descriptions. Blue rooms are staircases that will take you to a different floor of the building. And then you see here, because this room that I'm currently in has 3 rooms next to it, that means that there are 3 doors in this room, but 2 of them are destroyed rooms. That's what these grey rooms mean. And these are marked by these red doors here. So destroyed rooms, there's nothing in them. But they are a safe place to hang out and hide, basically. So if you sit in a destroyed room, you can do things like you can manage your equipment. So you have these enchantment that go on all your main body slots. So feet, legs, torso, left arm and right arm and head all provide sort of passive bonuses of various descriptions. So for example here I've got an earth power enchant on my right arm, which increases the amount of damage that my earth spells use. So that's why I've got my my earth spell in my primary slot, because it does the most damage at the minute. Then you've got these 3 slots here. You've got health, mana and attack. You can swap these around anytime you're in your settlement or in a safe place like a destroyed room here. And you have a total of 10 upgrade points that you can use to customize your character's stats and boost them by a certain amount. So what I've done is I boosted my attack by sort of 5 degrees and my health by 5 degrees. And this character that I'm currently playing already has decent mana, so I don't need to upgrade his mana at all. But if I click on the mana slot, you see I've got a couple of mana enchants here that I could swap in if I needed to. But at the moment, if I put one of those in there, that would take up too many of my upgrade points, and so the attack one would cease to function, because it goes in order. It applies the health ones first, then the mana ones, then the attack ones. I'll take that out because I don't need it for now. And there we go. So I say character because in this game there is a sort of permadeath mechanic in that the character that you control can die. That's not the end of the game though. This isn't a roguelike or anything like that, despite having permadeath and procedural generation. What happens is each new character has its own new set of base stats to work from, so attack, health and mana. But other than that, they keep all the stuff that you've acquired up until then. So you don't have to go and reacquire all your spells. You don't have to reacquire all your chants and stuff. It's just the character might handle a little bit differently for various reasons because of their standard passive bonuses that they have from the outset. Right, if you look at my dungeon map in the corner now, you'll see that I'm in a yellow room. This is a stash room. Every building has one of these, and it's a room that has a significant amount of treasure in it. Usually in the form of crafting materials and consumables. So when you find your stash room, you'll probably want to search it and figure out what goodies you can get from there. They're not always useful. They're not guaranteed to be useful because, like everything else in this game, it's procedurally generated, of course. But they're usually worth rooting through because if stuff isn't useful immediately, then it will probably be useful at some point in the future. So it's still worth looting them for everything you've got. And if you look on the mini-map up in the top left corner, you can see where certain things are. So like the orange things on the map are things that we can collect. So if we smash through these wooden boxes here, yeah, there we are. We picked up a Glyph Transplant scroll, which allows you to transfer your consciousness from your current character to a new one that you have hanging out in your settlement. So that's a good way of sort of switching around your base stats. If you're not happy with the character you've currently got for whatever reason, you can switch your consciousness with another person and basically have something new to play. Anyway, that is how the inside of buildings work. You don't need to explore every building, and in fact the developers specifically say that it is both futile and undesirable to do so. So don't bother, basically. You only really need to go into a building if there's something specific that you're looking for. Like a particular crafting item or something like that. Right, let's make our way through this area. Can we fit through that gap? No, we cannot. I think this might have been a bad area to demonstrate what we're on about. So I'm going to leave this area and go to a different place. The nice thing about our dungeon map in the lower left, in the sort of lower middle down there, is that you can see a couple of rooms ahead at all times. And that means you can quickly and easily estimate if a particular area is going to be worth your time. And so if something that you're looking for isn't within a few rooms of where you start, it's probably not worth exploring that area in too much detail, because you'll just end up wasting a lot of time and possibly health, and maybe even risking your character's life in the process. So at this point, the kind of secret mission room that we're looking for is not within 4 rooms of the entrance. So I'm just going to head on back and we'll go and search somewhere else instead. Now, as far as the enemies go, you don't get experience points or anything like that for killing them, but you might notice that sound that just happened here. If we look at our message log here, it says completed, kill 80 of Skelebot's Grunt. Now, there are various unlockables in the game that you acquire through various circumstances. Killing specific numbers of particular enemies tends to reward you. I say reward. But it unlocks additional enemy types, normally variations on that original type of enemy. So for example, if you kill a large number of bats, you will then start getting fire bats and ice bats appearing around the area. If you kill a certain number of robots, then more advanced versions of robots will appear around the place, all that sort of thing. So the game kind of adapts according to how you play. It evolves over time, and you unlock new stuff, and you find new enemies, and new possibilities open up, and it's just one of the most fascinating and interesting things about this game is just the sheer amount of flexibility it has for catering to different playstyles. Like, you can even adjust the difficulty level of the platforming and the combat and the city building all independently of one another. So we're currently playing on I've turned the platforming and the combat difficulty up a little bit from its default settings. And so what that means, in the platforming sections, there are fewer of those wooden platforms that have been built by default in the background of the screen, so you have to build a few more of them yourself. There's a few trickier jumps to make around the place. And there's certain missions that are specifically designed to be significant platforming challenges as well. So I don't think I've got any of those available at the minute, so I can't show you what I mean. But they're basically sort of race against time. You have to get out of an area before a lava flow consumes you. So those missions can be quite rewarding because they're extremely dangerous. But obviously you can also be at significant risk of dying as well. Right, look at our dungeon map. Down here, we got this brown room here, which is the secret mission entrance, which is exactly what we wanted. So I'm just going to make it through this area and the next one, and that will take us to our mission. So the whole thematic thing with reality being shattered and the different time periods, that's all represented in these different areas that you come across. Each area has its own sort of visual theme based on the time period it's from. That affects the buildings that you see around the place, and it also affects the enemies that are around the place as well. Now again, that evolves and changes over time. As you defeat the lieutenants of the Overlord, the monsters start getting more bold and start spreading further afield. So the more lieutenants you've beaten, the greater variety of monsters you might start seeing in different areas. So for example, if you're into sort of like a Bronze Age type area, and it's next to an area that is from the far future, after you defeated a couple of lieutenants, the robots from the future area will start showing up in the Bronze Age area and that sort of thing. It's just a way that the game sort of keeps itself interesting as you progress through. Right, here's our mission entrance. The secret location of a tower filled with bosses hoarding resources has been found. You'll have to brave 3 floors of mini-bosses, but once you defeat them all, the spoils are yours. So the rewards here, we have a new clue to one of the mysteries behind the world, so you get some lore for defeating all these secret missions. We get an Aquaurgist's Well, which increases the abilities of any of our survivors who are Aquaurgists. We get a Sheep Matter, Ancient Gates, the front gate common to many Bronze Age desert towns before reality shattered. And that provides everyone who's playing, because you can play this multiplayer as well, with a +7 deflection rating, which basically increases our defense. And we also get a scroll of Look for Trouble, which unlocks a bunch of missions on the map. So, not exactly what I was after, but let's go have a go anyway. So this is a mission staging area, so you can warp straight back out of the mission if you want to. You can get a reminder of your objectives at this little thing over here. And then you head over here to start the mission proper. And there is the tower we must ascend. Get out of here. Right. So, you see, we've again got our dungeon map down in the corner. And this is going to be a series of rooms that we're going to have to work our way through. Probably in an upwards direction. There's the door to the next area. But let's just have a quick scout around, see if there's any loot we can grab along the way. Right, that thing I just picked up is an enchant charge. So what happens with those is they gradually increase the percentage with each one that you collect. And when that reaches 100%, you get a new enchant. So it's a new item of equipment. Right, here is a boss. I'm just going to pause the game for a sec, just so we can figure things out. Now you see above his head, there's these little icons that show his elements that will be most effective against him and elements that will be least effective against him. So red is fire, blue is water, purple is entropy. Or you can also mouse over them to get some more detailed information about them as well. So this is a level 4 urban mech called RL Sanf. He has 1,335.5 health remaining, 20 shielding, 105% of normal attack, and so on. But the important things there are the elemental weaknesses. So he's 30% extra weak to fire. So if we hit him with fire spells, we'll do 30% extra damage. He's immune to acid water, he's immune to lava, and he's got a very strong anti-knockback. So because he's so large, we're not going to be able to knock him around the place. But yeah, okay, I've already got my fireball spell set on my right click on my mouse. So let's just pelt him with some fireballs. While taking care to avoid the other chaps around the place as well. And he's down already. Beautiful. Now, obviously you don't want to get caught in that explosion. So boss is a grand term, but in reality they're either micro or mini bosses in most of the times that you encounter them. So they're not super difficult or anything like that, and it's mostly a case of figuring out their elemental weaknesses and exploiting them if you have the appropriate spells to do so. If you don't, you can use a spell that they just don't have any particular strengths and weaknesses against and do a decent amount of damage. But don't hit them with something that they're resistant against, because that's just a waste of time basically. You'll do some damage, but not enough to take them down in a timely manner. Okay, so between each boss room, you have a couple of rooms of just wandering around and exploring and maybe getting some loot. So this is an evil room. I forget exactly what that means. Each type of room has its own sort of specific meaning in terms of determining how likely you are to encounter certain items and enemies and that sort of thing. I think an evil room just tends to be a sort of a room that's got a bit of a fiddly layout and a few enemies. And then a pathway onwards. Stairways are pretty obvious. They lead to the next floor and usually have a ladder or a stairway of some sort in them. And it's onward to the next boss room. So who are we fighting this time? It's a bug. So again, if we pause. So he's 30% extra weak against light and water and 75% resistant to air. Now I do actually have a light spell. It's only level 4, but that should do the job for now. So I'm just going to move that into my left mouse button slot for now. And that should do a bit of extra damage against him. The nice thing about this spell is it's extra quick as well. In fact, you might not even be able to see very well how that's firing because it's so quick. But it's also not super damaging, unfortunately. But it's probably the best I have at the minute. So these bug enemies here, they don't really do very much besides follow you around. So as long as you can stay ahead of them, you should be fine. Lost quite a bit of health. That's unfortunate. I'm just going to move a bit of the rubbish on my table because I think some of it is actually blocking the signal from my wireless keyboard. So I was having a little bit of control issues in that one. But seems to be responding okay now. Okay, where's the door? It's up on top of this platform here, I think. There it is. Right, we've got one more floor of boss to deal with. You can do that hover over thing on any enemy. So like we can see here that this guy here has weakness against air. So if we switch to our lightning spell, that does much more damage against him. A lot of these sort of elemental weaknesses make a lot of sense. So for example, robots, things made of metal tend to be weak against lightning, as they are in most sort of RPGs. And so on. Icy things weak against fire. But for the most part, you can sort of get away. As long as you have at least 2 spells of different elements, you can cover most eventualities. I mean, you can sort of optimize your playthrough by having spells of all the elements if you want to, but that takes a lot longer to kind of progress and sort yourself out for. So there's no need to do that. But if you are the sort of person who enjoys min-maxing and that kind of thing, you can absolutely do that. And that's one of the beautiful things about this game. You can play it exactly how you want to. So like I say, the developers do suggest that there's absolutely no need to be a completionist, because there's literally no way that you can sort of see literally everything in this game. Literally. But if you want to, you can do. Right, this guy's weak against earth, so I'm going to put my Forest Rage spell back on. The interesting thing about the bosses is that they sometimes sort of subvert the expectations of the strengths and weaknesses. So, for example, this guy here, he doesn't have the usual lightning weakness. He was weak against earth instead. Right, here we are. So here's our bit of lore that we've acquired for completing this mission. Did the other Glyph bearers feel it? Did they feel the wind battering at them as if howling round the walls of their house when they crossed into the wild? In a natural storm, we used to just have to make sure our walls were sound and any cracks patched before winter. But this wind threatens my very soul, and I do not know why it does not come in the cracks and tear me apart. Seeley's Ledsford, Lucina's Mountain Settlement's 5th Glyph bearer. So the sort of big lore thing behind this game is that those windstorms, if you spend too much time out in them without a glyph, which is the little sparkly thing I've got floating along behind me, then you'll either sort of be torn apart, or you'll go mad. And so the Glyph bearers are special because they have been blessed by the Alari to carry these glyphs around with them and go and try and sort the world out a bit. So as the intro text said, there's no way that you're going to put the Earth back together again after what has happened to it. But what you can do is you can make what it's turned into a more pleasant place to live by getting rid of the Overlord and by pushing back those deadly windstorms. So the Ilari obviously have some sort of grand plan in mind for humanity. And that gradually gets revealed over the course of those bits of lore that you pick up along the place. So there is an ongoing story to this, if you want to follow it. But again, you can completely ignore that if you want to and just enjoy the moment-to-moment gameplay. And the moment-to-moment gameplay is really enjoyable. It's very much got the feel of sort of a 16-bit home computer Euro platformer to it. And you probably noticed that the graphics aren't the best. Part of that is deliberate, though. Part of the way this game is presented is absolutely deliberate to try and pay homage to the 16-bit era. It certainly feels like a 16-bit game in terms of how you leap around and explore the levels and that sort of thing. It's a very strong sort of Turrican feel to a lot of it, particularly with the sort of directional shooting and that sort of thing. Alright, so what I've done there is I've used the warps that you unlock as you progress through a particular area. Those are the little flashing dots on the dungeon map down in the corner. And you can use those to kind of fast travel between different areas in a particular region. Oops, wrong button. Made a nice stack of wooden platforms there. I do like the fact that you can just build them under your feet. That just means that you can effectively elevate yourself to any altitude as long as you've got enough in your inventory, and they're very cheap, so you don't have to worry too much about that sort of thing. Right, so the stuff we've acquired on the map, if I go to Guardian Powers here, I can use this scroll here to create the Ancient Gate, and that will just build it in the settlement. And then I've also got a few of these here as well. So an Apothekinesis Tower. The Alari will form a new structure and it will provide a bonus to apothekineticists. They are most effective if you build them on grasslands or grasslands with groves. So if I save that for later, we've got some grasslands areas down here. You can see what type of area is down in the corner. So if I build a few of these down here. Yep, use that now. And then build one here. Yep. And another one here. Okay, the Aquurgist's well is best when you place it on the ocean shallows, such as here. Again, ocean shallows is different from ocean, so you need to pay attention to that. I'll pop one of those there. Technozoologism is best on Ice Age plains and thawing plains. So here's some thawing plains. Let's build one there. And Lumbermancy Focal Station is best on deciduous forest or evergreen forest. I don't know if we've got access to any of those at the minute. Grasslands with groves. Yeah, I don't think there's actually... Oh, are these forests? Yes, evergreen forest. Okay, so we'll pop that there. Alright, so that's sort of really put those down in an optimal location. It will have boosted the stats of all of my survivors back in the place here who have the appropriate classes. Oops, that's the wrong thing. Dispatch missions. So here, you see their chance of success against the Overlord has actually gone up quite a bit from placing those structures that give them bonuses. They're all still unwilling to go because they're not likely to succeed and they're very likely to die. But they have improved somewhat. Here's our new gate that we built. See, it just sort of plops them down and the settlement sort of becomes this glorious mishmash of nonsense as you progress. It's rather wonderful. Okay. So, let's go do one other type of mission, just so you can see what's going on. The missions that are on the world map here, they have a couple of purposes. You can either find survivors in them. Very occasionally, you can find scrolls for them. Or you can find spells. The main function of them is to unlock spells for them. So, here we have Energy Slice 5. That is the light spell I had before that was only level 4. So, this is actually worth pursuing. And we'll also get a grounded ship, which will increase entropy damage that enemies take. And the type of mission we've got here is called Fix Anachronisms in Building. A strange rift in time is influencing a building in this region, and creatures from many different time periods are flooding in. Well, more than usual. The interlopers are causing the rift to widen. If you destroy them, then the rift will be sealed, and you will recover the resources stashed in the building. But beware, if you kill monsters that actually belong in the local time period, the rift will flare and spawn more monsters. So this is quite a tricky one where you've got to actually sort of figure out which monsters you need to kill and which ones you need to leave alone. You've just entered a Fix the Anachronism mission. Kill all monsters from other time periods while the natives wail await you. If you kill a native, more monsters will spawn. This mission isn't about memorization. You can test monsters by, well, killing them. Combine that with your powers of deduction to solve the puzzle instead. Deduction is always more fun than memorization anyway. Alright, so we are in the Ice Age, I believe. So, the Ice Age has a lot of robots. These guys here, these are from the desert. You don't belong here because you're a Highlands thing. If you look at the log up in the top right corner as well, it tells you how many native monsters are left as well. Right, we want to kill that guy there. 6 left. We want to get rid of that rhino. He doesn't belong here. This dust bunny here. A repulsive dust storm. 4 to go. On the bull up there. He wants to go. Oh, he's resistant to my wood spell, so he can get some lightning in his face. There we go. 3 more to go. Another dust bunny. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Oh, I'm gonna kill you because you're in the way. I don't care if it causes a rift flare. That one there is weak against Earth, so I'm just going to swap these back. I do like the fact you can pause and sort of swap things around. It gives a sort of nice kind of strategic element to it. Reminds me a bit of the old Infinity Engine games, where you sort of pause and make your decisions and then figure things out. And it's quite a key part of this game. So, like, there is a lot of action in this game, a lot of platforming, a lot of shooting and that sort of thing. But there's also a significant strategic element to it as well. What are you? Jellyfish? You don't look like you belong here. You look like you belong in the ocean. Die. Right, only one more to go. Ice Elemental, you probably belong here, don't you? So we'll leave you to it. Let's climb up a bit higher. As it all seems to be flaming robots down here. Now, doing missions like this isn't the only way to get spells. You can also craft spells using various items that you find in the buildings and cave networks and that sort of thing. That's probably a little beyond the scope of what we're going to do today, but you do have that option as well. And in fact, you actually have the... It's possible to make better quality spells that way as well, because you can collect these items called... sort of uncommon, rare, epic and legendary gems as well. And if you craft a spell using one of those gems instead of just the regular ingredients, then it will have various bonuses to it. In fact, if you look down at my spells down here, the little purple thing you see in the corner of these means that I've built an epic version of these spells. So that adds these those spell modifiers you can see at the bottom of the tooltip there. So 40% projectile speed, causes condition on target enemy -30 deflection rating. So my earth spell actually reduces their defense as well, which is very nice. I put my wooden platforms on the right mouse button for the minute, so it's a little bit easier to build them. Do you belong here? I don't think you do. There we go, all done. Right. We got an achievement for that. You ain't got to go home, but you can't stay here. Right, so once that is all done, did we just get the stuff? Yes, so we've been given the stuff for that now. So I've got my level 5 energy slice there, so I can just pop that old one out of the way until I can get rid of it and get some consciousness shards is the money in this game. And then we just have to get out of here, having looted the place for all it's worth in the meantime. Now, of course, if you want to, you can then go and kill all the native monsters as well, now that the rift is closed. But we're not going to worry too much about that right now. We are just going to find our way to the exits, which is right here. And then warp out the mission area. Yeah, and then the process of playing this game is basically repeating all that. So I would need to, at this point, I would need to look for some more secret missions to unlock the wind shelters and get rid of the storm in this area if I want to go and face that lieutenant over there. When I defeat him, the Overlord's level will drop. He will still out-level me by 5 levels, though, remember, so I'll need to send some of those survivors on missions to reduce his level somewhat. But I'll also need to buff them up a bit in order to make them more capable and willing to go. But yeah, that's basically how this game works. I really like this game. I've liked it ever since I played it back in 2012, and I actually hadn't played it for a little while before this week, basically. But I've been absolutely hooked on it ever since. So yeah, and it can potentially go on forever as well. You do have a nice sort of sense of closure when you do eventually beat the Overlord for a region. But when you do that, a new continent unlocks, and it's more difficult, and there's more stuff to find, and you can unlock more types of enemies and more types of region and that side of things. And it just keeps going and going and going and going and going. And if you read sort of some people online, they're on to like their sort of 20th continent and so on. It's a lot of fun. I really like this game. It's probably not for everyone, because it's very much a game that rewards you if you enjoy setting your own goals and figuring things out for yourself. But if you're happy to do that sort of thing, there's a lot of fun to be had here for sure. Alright, on that note then, it just remains for me to say, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. Be sure to check out moegamer.net for new articles on Japanese and Japanese-inspired video games, new and old, every weekday. Every month, Moegamer features an in-depth exploration of an individual game or series as its cover game, so be sure to check the archives to see if your favourite has had a deep dive yet.
If you'd like to support the site directly, please consider becoming a patron or buying me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.